Have you ever been on an IT project where everything feels like it's going great until it suddenly feels like you're walking through a minefield? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, today we're going to give you the map and the tools to navigate that minefield. We're going to turn all that uncertainty into a clear path to success. Let's get right into it.
So here's our game plan. First up, we'll get real about why so many projects go sideways. Then we'll dive into the art of risk management itself. After that, we get hands-on. We're talking about how to find these risks and figure out how big they are. And of course, what to do about them. And finally, we'll wrap up by talking about how to make this whole thing a winning habit.
All right, first things first. Let's get right to the heart of the problem. Why do so many IT projects, well, fail?
I mean, think about it. It's a story you've probably seen play out. You get a sharp team, a decent budget, a clear goal. Everything looks perfect on paper. So why do things still manage to go completely off the rails? Well, it usually boils down to one single, really powerful factor.
And there it is. The number one culprit is uncertainty. It's all the stuff you didn't see coming, the curveballs, the surprises that can absolutely wreck your timeline, blow up your budget, and compromise the final product. So the big question is, how on earth do you manage something you don't even know is coming?
Well, that brings us to the solution. This is where project risk management comes in to save the day. It's basically a system, a process for finding, analyzing, and dealing with project risks. In other words, it's how you take all those scary unknowns and turn them into knowns that you can actually plan for.
Now, I want you to really lock in on this definition because this is a huge mindset shift. Our gut reaction is to think of risk as a bad thing, right? But in project management, a risk is just an uncertainty. And here's the kicker. That uncertainty could be a threat, sure, but it could also be an amazing opportunity. So a negative risk is exactly what you'd think, a threat. A key developer suddenly quits or a supplier is late. But a positive risk, that's an opportunity. Maybe a brand new piece of tech comes out that could cut your development time in half. A truly great project manager is always scanning the horizon for both of these. Now, before you start managing risks, you have to know your boundaries. Think of risk appetite as how much of a gambler you're willing to be. How much uncertainty can you stomach for a big potential payoff? Risk tolerance, on the other hand, is your absolute breaking point. It's a hard line, like saying, we cannot go more than 10% over budget, period. Together, these two things define the rules of the game for your project. And this right here, this is the playbook. These 6 steps are the core loop of risk management. And I say loop for a reason. This is not a one-and-done checklist. You plan your approach, you find the risks, you analyze them, you figure out your response, and then you are constantly monitoring and controlling things as the project unfolds. Okay, theory time is over. Let's get practical. How do you actually find these risks that are lurking just around the corner? You've actually got a whole toolkit at your disposal. You can do a classic brainstorming session with your team. You can interview experts who've done this kind of thing a dozen times. Or you can use a more formal method like a SWOT analysis. Each one is like a different lens that helps you spot things you might have missed. The goal is just to get every single potential risk out in the open. So where do you keep track of all this? In what might be the most important document in this whole process, the risk register. Think of it as your single source of truth. It's a log of every risk, its probability, its potential impact, and this is so important, who is responsible for watching it? And notice that risk number 3 here is an opportunity, that faster tech we were just talking about. Okay, so you've found your risks, you've logged them. Now for the moment of truth. What are you actually going to do about them? Let's walk through the 4 main strategies for handling threats. The first and most direct strategy is to just avoid the risk. Let's say a new technology is just too buggy and unproven. You simply change the plan to stick with the stable version you know. You're basically altering your route to go around the danger completely. Second option, you can transfer it. This is where you pay someone else to take on the risk for you. The classic example is buying insurance, but it could also mean outsourcing a really tricky part of the project to a specialized firm. The risk doesn't vanish, but if it happens, the financial hit isn't your problem anymore. Third, and this is probably the one you'll use most often, is to mitigate. Here, you can't get rid of the risk entirely, but you can take action to make it less likely to happen or less painful if it does. For example, doing more frequent software testing won't guarantee 0 bugs, but it'll definitely reduce their impact down the road. And finally, sometimes you just have to accept the risk. Now, this can be passive, where you basically just say, okay, we see it, we'll live with it, and move on. Or it can be active, where you acknowledge the risk and then create a specific contingency plan, a plan B, that you can trigger if that risk actually happens. All of these strategies are backed up by your safety nets. You have your contingency plans and your fallback plans, which are your pre-planned moves. And just as critical, you have your money. Contingency reserves are the funds you set aside for the risks you've already identified, your known unknowns. Management reserves? That's your emergency fund for the things that come completely out of left field, your unknown unknowns. All right, let's bring all this home. The real secret to success here isn't just going through these steps once at the beginning of a project. It's about turning risk management into a continuous, ongoing habit. The best practices are pretty simple, but they're incredibly powerful. Get everybody involved. You need all those different viewpoints. Document everything, because if it's not written down, it might as well not exist. Use the right software to keep it all organized. And when the project is over, do a lessons learned review so you get even better next time.
And one last super important point. Your job is not done once you've responded to a risk. You have to keep an eye out for residual risks. That's the little bit of risk that's left over. And you have to watch for secondary risks. These are brand new problems that your solution might have created. For instance, transferring work to a contractor solves one issue, but might create a new risk if they don't perform well. You've always got to stay vigilant. So at the end of the day, risk management isn't really about being afraid of failure. It's a proactive, powerful strategy for engineering success. It's what gives you the confidence to stare uncertainty in the face and deliver amazing results. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. In your own work, what's the biggest unmanaged risk you're dealing with right now? Thanks for tuning in.